Welcome to Voices in Vet podcast. I am your host, Taylah Leeson, and in today's episode is all about building confidence in kids when it comes to emergencies and why those early conversations matter more than we might think. Joining us today is Amy Gomes, a critical care paramedic with nearly 2 decades experience on the front lines across Queensland. Alongside her work in emergency care, Amy is also an author and the founder of One Little Heart, a platform dedicated to helping children and families understand emergencies in a way that feels empowering and not overwhelming. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For those listening who might be hearing you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I have a background as a critical care paramedic. I'm also a mum to 2 little ones. My husband's also a critical care paramedic. So a lot of stuff that I do in my own time probably really exploded once I had children. So I have now published one book by myself and then co-authored another one, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. And part of my side project with One Little Heart has always been a way that I can give back to the community with a positive lens, whether that be assisting with fundraising or charity purposes, just as a different break away from some of the heavy workload that it can be as a paramedic sometimes.
So I see you have your books here. Your first book is What Paramedics Do. Can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to write that one?
Yeah, so I actually originally wrote the manuscript for my husband. When we had my son, I was looking for some content that was about paramedics specifically, not just an ambulance, something really superficial about them. I wanted to really explain to kids what we did and realised there wasn't a lot there. So the intent was always just to write a story for my husband and my son. But after speaking to some colleagues, I realised that there was an interest and a gap for that. So it blew up into What Paramedics Do. And it's designed to help familiarise kids with paramedics, to desensitise them in a way to emergencies. There's a lot of research that says that it reduces medical anxiety just by talking about medical emergencies with children. Yeah. And that can help them prepare for the unexpected. We can never totally remove the trauma that children would experience in terrible situations, but sometimes just understanding what we do can help calm them in those situations. So that's where that stemmed from. And then profits, I used some of the profits to donate AEDs to communities, so public access in very prominent public locations to be used for communities. So that was a lovely side project of that.
Now, your second book, What Little Heroes Do, what inspired you and Sarah to write that?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I co-authored this with the amazing Sarah Duncanson, who is a paediatric ICU nurse from Victoria. She also is the director of PEDS education. And she reached out to me some time ago and said, I've got this manuscript and an idea. I'd obviously self-published before. And we realised we both had this really passionate shared ground for educating children, reducing anxiety and fear for kids. This is not fear-based learning. And we came together. We used the same illustrator, Pia Leo, who is just phenomenal. And it all just turned into another beautiful project. And profits from some of the profits from those sales go to the Sisterhood Project, who also teach education to parents for first aid. So again, just another way that we feel we can share our knowledge and education.
And give back, it's really amazing.
Yeah, so it's been wonderful. And Sarah is just one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. So it's just a really cup-filling journey for me in that regard too.
Wonderful. Why is it important that children are included in conversations about emergency?
I think as adults we don't always appreciate how capable children are. And I think there's things that we just naturally pigeonhole into adult world and we don't give them enough credit. And it's actually been phenomenal for me as a paramedic to attend some scenes where the child on scene actually is more calm than the adults. Wow. And they don't have always that emotional lens that we as adults have developed through our journeys. And they can just be a lot more matter of fact about things. And I was actually talking to a call taker when I was doing research into my first book about I canvassed across Australia some of our fantastic 000 call takers. And one of them reported a scenario where they were on the phone to a child. An adult got on the phone and ended up being more distressed, more chaotic, and they asked them to put the child back on because the child just followed the directions. They actually retain information. They are way more capable than we give them credit for. And I think I saw that with the first book because it also has educational content in the back. It's got some practice 000 audio and a few things. I saw the learning that came from that. And then what Little Heroes do is that next step in planting the seed for some first aid concepts, starting discussions. You can also buy a pack that has a first aid training kit in it as well for kids. And it's remarkable to see how naturally children just pick up these concepts. And we don't expect children to be saving lives tomorrow. It's to plant the seeds to recognise how capable they are. My son will be the first to go and retrieve an AED from somewhere if he recognised that something wasn't right. And it might be those moments that they are not the ones that are saving the life, but they're helping. And it can be used in so many different ways. That helping nature in children is just so valuable.
And they do just naturally love to help.
Absolutely.
Children. We don't give them enough credit, I think, for what they are capable of doing and knowing, and even as simple as going to get the AED.
Now when we're out and about in public, my son actually will yell out really loudly, AED mum. And I at first I was like, a little bit like people probably think we're weird. And now I'm like, no, this is actually a side effect of this is we'll be at an airport or something and he'll yell out, it's an AED, and all these adults will look. And I'm like, if it makes us as adults start paying attention to those things in a game manner, then in the moment when I'm stressed, I will naturally have remembered where we've had those conversations.
Spotting the AEDs has almost turned into a little game, which actually leads into our next question. How can parents or educators start simple conversations about emergencies without creating fear?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something I think a lot of parents and educators are worried about. And Sarah and I are very passionate about this not being fear-based learning. The book has a lot of really good examples that can be spoken through, from snake bite situations to requirement for an EpiPen. So there's some good scenario practicing there. Kids do love that scenario-based practicing. And even if it's just talking through how to call 000, remembering that they might not know your PIN. So how do we teach them how to use the emergency function on a phone? Or if they're too young to know that, it's maybe discussing with them who's an adult they might go to. What if they are not at home and in a public place? How do they identify someone that might help? Another common one, which is challenging for the rural and remote families, but another common one is understanding who your neighbours are that would be able to help. So for some children, they may not be old enough to call 000, but talking them through, can you go and get John? Like, are you able to yell out for them to come and help or something like that? Or unlocking the front door. It's things like that this isn't all about them responding to a cardiac arrest. It's intentionally tapered, but it's also about discussing some really practical tips. And like I said, they're so pragmatic in emergencies. Like the calmness that children bring sometimes, especially when they're not deeply involved in it, they can take on tasks that absolutely keeps them busy. They feel valued. And as I said, they are capable. So it's talking through practical things like that. Can you wait outside? Can you wave down the paramedics when they arrive? Things like that are not scary but so essential in an emergency.
And something that they'll remember, and it's simple little things like that we would forget to tell them or to teach them.
Absolutely.
And that they are capable. Now, what is one practical step that families can take to help children feel a bit more prepared in emergency situations?
I think it's children at various different ages will have different ability to, I guess, retain education. So it's definitely catered for your child. So there's probably not something singular I can think of. Even just planting the seed about an emergency. A lot of kids know 000 now, which is so fantastic. But when it comes to the practicality of actually calling 000, I think we don't always go that next step. The book has a linked 000 audio in it, practice audio, just so that they can understand the questions that might be asked. But I think that step for how they would actually call, when I was younger, we still had landlines. It was so easy. But now phones are locked.
I was just thinking about that the landline would have been very easy to call 000, but now I wouldn't have thought about how much more difficult it is to call with the smartphones.
Absolutely. And so it's about trying to make sure that they understand the practicality parts of that. That's probably my biggest thing, because if they don't know what to do in the moment, it's them being able to to get the help that they need in that moment. That's so crucial. Like if we can't get in, we as paramedics, we will find a way to get inside. We can do all of that. Actually getting us coming is sometimes the most important part. Yep. So if I could suggest anything, it's actually thinking through the practicality of how would they call 000. Yep. Do they know our address?
Yeah.
Do they know our mobile number? Yeah. That can be a challenging one. As I said, landlines were a lot easier. Yeah. But we also have little fridge magnets that's got on it some really key things, names, who else might be someone you would call, home address. Yep. And practicing things like that with kids is the next step. So how would they call 000? And then actually knowing your home address and a number.
How to remember or to teach them is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think we've done a really good job talking about 000. And when I do readings at school, so many of the kids know it, but it's how would they actually call? That's probably the next step.
If you could change how we educate kids in emergency situations, what would you do?
I think currently, like I said early on, I don't think we recognise how capable children are. Mm-hmm. And I think that we should be educating children with the concepts of emergency response much earlier on than we currently do. And there was a big study that came out of Denmark where they actually provided cardiac arrest education in schools, and they tripled their out-of-hospital cardiac arrest rates in a decade. Now, that wasn't just children then responding. The flow-on effect is they go home, they tell their brothers and sisters, their parents, they talk about it. And it's that osmotic effect of sharing the information. And then obviously the confidence in those kids becoming responders themselves. But children are just such good educators themselves. And I think that that's probably a space we just absolutely need to tackle. Yeah. We're a bigger country than Denmark, so logistically it is more challenging. But we need to focus on education at a younger age. Yep. Just planting the seed, knowing that they can be helpers. They don't need to be proficient in CPR. Yeah. They can absolutely be empowered. And the other thing that I think benefits children, because inevitably we can't control if they're in an emergency, but what benefits children psychologically is there's a research that came out in 2014 that showed that if children are familiar with at least some degree of the concept of an emergency, and in the moment they understand what may happen, they feel they have a role, they can take some degree of control, and there was significantly reduced psychological harm for those children because they like to know that they're helping. So rather than being so detached and just observers in an emergency, it's allowing them to actually have some degree of input. Then they feel like they've contributed. So it's really important that we actually empower them in those moments for their psychological safety as well. So from your perspective as a paramedic, what's one key thing you wish first aid trainers emphasise more, especially when it comes to children? Yeah, I think that my biggest thing that I would love first aiders to fully appreciate in themselves is the power they have to educate people in these emergent situations. I know that that's the reason they're teaching people first aid, but I don't think they always appreciate truly the power in the work that they do. Yep. So a lot of the work I do in the cardiac arrest space with One Little Heart is truly based on the fact that as paramedics, we don't always get there quick enough by logistical means because we're not instantly at every address. That's just the nature internationally. We can't be there instantly. And the power of people knowing first aid is absolutely what saves lives. So especially in big things like cardiac arrest when minutes matter, any attempt of resuscitation is better than no attempt. And I think the power of first aid education for kids is enabling them to do some really core response techniques early. And whether, like I said, that may not be CPR, but whether in the moment it's a child knowing to retrieve an AED, it might be something like that. And the education in the first aid space is absolutely what saves lives. That first 10 minutes before the paramedics arrive, that's what will make the difference. Following on from that, when it comes to real life situations, what's one thing you wish people knew to do before an ambulance arrives? Probably even before that, even before we're coming. One thing that is absolutely pivotal in the chain of survival for people is calling 000 early. So whether that's a patient in cardiac arrest, someone choking, or someone experiencing a catastrophic bleed, really, really pivotal part is calling 000. So there will be expert call takers who provide life-saving advice on the phone. And I think the support you can have by putting your phone on loudspeaker and having them there talk you through the situation rather than tackling it alone. First aid education helps in those situations, absolutely, but having someone else there who's also making sure the paramedics are coming, that is what will make a difference and contribute to improved outcomes. They will also prompt to start CPR. They'll assist with breathing checks to know whether or not someone's breathing effectively. They will direct to apply pressure. They will suggest getting an AED if needed. So all of those things are things that in the moment when you're cognitively overloaded, no matter how good you are in the education space, how many times you've practiced it, which is also so important. But when it is a real life emergency, making that phone call early is just essential. Paramedics are on their way. It's still doing anything you can. And we always say any attempt is better than no attempt, especially in a cardiac arrest. There's been instances where we've arrived and people thought they would just wait till the paramedics got there. I see a lot better rates of CPR, but one thing I think I really want to see improve is AED retrieval rate. And there is a lot of myths about defibrillation when the patient might not need it. AEDs are totally safe. So you cannot defibrillate someone unless they're in a specific shockable rhythm. You can't harm anyone. So I think what I would like people to know is that you cannot do any more harm than the situation, and we really need early defibrillation. So as paramedics, when we arrive, there is no secret weapon we bring. CPR, defibrillation, that's our focus, absolutely. And that's things that bystanders can do. So I think call 000 early, get the experts on the phone to provide that advice, but then also you just need to give it a go. There's nothing sadder than getting there and there being an AED perfectly packed up next to a patient in cardiac arrest.
Doing something is always better than not doing anything. Any attempt is better than no attempt.
Absolutely.
But with the books that you've written and a lot of work you've done through One Little Heart, can you tell us about these projects and what drives that?
I love being a paramedic. I think that, it's the best job in the world easily. What drives me to do this work is that it gives me an absolute creative privilege to have some sort of educational contribution towards children that's different to the normal. And I think that sometimes being a paramedic can be quite heavy, and this is just such a nice outlet to be able to share my knowledge and interact with children. So it's been wonderful in that regard. And I think there's so many different side effects. Like we've got both books translated into Auslan. And I got to meet a really lovely little girl who sat with me and taught me Auslan and a whole heap of other, really important things for her. And that connection with children and a reason to discuss emergencies has been really lovely in not in the moment of me as a paramedic. Having that non-acute time to just learn from children as well has been really beautiful. So that's been a really lovely side effect, I guess, that I just didn't really quite expect, or getting the photos of kids practicing CPR on their pillow or their teddy. The second book, What Little Heroes Do, can be purchased with a first aid kit, a training first aid kit. It has just so many more talking points and activities that children can actually do. The first paramedic book is more focused on what paramedics will do, but this is about what they can do. And so I think it's really helpful for parents and educators to have some prompts in that space.
You have such a beautiful story in the books. Where can people go to find these books? How can they purchase them?
So they're both available on my website, onelittleheart.com.au. You can also follow along on Facebook or Instagram to see whether we're doing book readings or other events. We do a lot of emergency services related things with the books. But check them out online. You can also get the package with the first aid kit on there. And we also have an educator's pack specifically for schools. And that includes a CPR mannequin as well as an AED trainer, the first aid kit, the book, and a whole heap of education content that's in line with the curriculum. So a really important thing for schools. And we just hope that it empowers children to feel more comfortable in an emergency setting. We can help reduce psychological harm for the emergency space for children, but also inevitably that parents, educators, they all learn from kids too. They're great teachers and we can help save more lives. I'm also really happy to provide a discount to anyone listening. So if you use the code LOYAL10 at checkout, that'll give you 10% off all of your purchases. Help make it a little bit more accessible to everyone.
That's super exciting. Amy, thank you so much for sharing your experience today and your insights. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation is just how capable children really are when we give them the right tools and language, and how these small, simple conversations can make a real difference in an emergency. If you want to learn more about One Little Heart or check out their books, we'll include the links in the description. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.